All right, so the last page that I'm going to give you the video for today is angles of elevation and depression. This is part of our trig unit that our book actually skips over, and it is very important that you understand and know how to do this, because this is where the real world word problems are going to come into play here with using your trig to solve them. So we have these two guys, one's on the top of a building and one's down here on the ground. So the guy up here at the top, here's his eye. So he's looking straight out. This is his line of sight. And the guy down here on the ground, there's his eye. So this is his line of sight if he looks straight out. Now I want you to pay attention to these lines of sights for both guys, and they are parallel. Now, the angle of elevation. Think about what elevation means. It means you're going to go up. So the angle of elevation is from the guy on the ground, and he looks up at the guy on top of the building or top of a cliff. But the guy at the top, he's got to look down. So that's an angle of depression, to look down at the guy on the ground. So the angle of elevation and the angle of depression in this figure are alternate interior angles We learned about those, remember, in Unit 1, Activity 7. And we know that the alternate interior angles theorem says that if parallel lines are cut by transversal, so I have parallel lines cut by the transversal, then the alternate interior angles are congruent. And that is by that alternate interior angles theorem. All right, it is important on these word problems that you draw a picture. So pay attention also to certain words in here. So the angle of elevation from point A to the top of a cliff is 34 degrees. So I'm going to have point A somewhere down here on the ground. And again, this is our ground. And over here we'll have the top of our cliff. Now this is the base of the cliff. The cliff and the ground should make a right angle. So the angle of elevation from point A to the top of the cliff, that's going from the ground up. That's 34 degrees. And then they tell us if point A is 1,000 feet from the base of the cliff. So that 1,000 feet is an important number. And that's going from point A to the base of the cliff. So that's along this ground. And what we're looking for is, what is the height of the cliff? So height meaning it's a side of our triangle that we're looking for. So this is what we're looking for, the height of that cliff. So now from that 34 degrees, X is opposite, and the 1,000 feet is adjacent. So now we're going to go into our trig, and we're going to write out our SOHCAHTOA. The values we know, or the value we know is the adjacent side, so underline the A's. What we're looking for is the opposite, circle the O's. So for this problem, we're going to use tangent. Now, we'll tell you that on a lot of angle of elevation and depression problems, tangent seems to be the one that you're going to use most frequently, but it is not the only one that will always be used. So tangent of 34 degrees is equal to the opposite x over the adjacent 1,000. So we solve it just like we did on the other videos and the other examples. Cross multiply x equals 1,000 times the tangent of 34 degrees. And when you put that in your calculator, you should get about 674.5 feet, because the height of the cliff is going to be measured in feet. And if they don't tell you what to round to a 1 decimal place is fine. All right, on example 2, from the top of a 120-foot tower, so I've got a tower over here. And I know that it is 120 feet. But we have an air traffic controller observes an airplane on the runway at an angle of depression of 19 degrees. So airplane is on the runway at an angle of depression of 19 degrees. So first of all, you got to pay attention to where the runway is. The runway is always the ground. And I'm not going to draw a plane, I'm just going to write out plane. So here's the top of the tower, and somewhere up here is our air traffic controller. Okay, now his line of sight goes straight out. And it tells us that this was an angle of depression. That's 19 degrees. But thinking about what we said earlier, the angle of depression, angle of elevation, they're congruent. So I always draw my triangle like this. So I'm going to put that 19 degrees inside my triangle here. They're the same value. And then what we are looking for is how far from the base of the tower is the airplane. So we are looking for a side. So you do need to pay attention to what the question is asking for. Is it asking you for the measure of the angle of elevation or depression? In that case, you're going to use your inverse trig functions. Or are you looking for a side length? And in this case, we're looking for the side length. So how far from the base of the tower to the airplane? So this is our x that we are looking for, is this distance. So from the 19 degrees, the 120 feet is the opposite side. And from this 19 degrees, the x is the adjacent side. Write out your SOHCAHTOA. So we know the opposite, underline the O's. Looking for the adjacent, circle the A's. So again, this one we're going to use tangent. So the tangent of 19 degrees is going to equal 120 over x. Put that tangent of 19 over 1. Cross multiply, so x times the tangent of 19 degrees is equal to 120 times 1. So you're going to divide by the tangent of 19 degrees. And you can put in 120 divided by the tangent of 19 degrees like this. And you're going to get about 348.5 feet. Now notice I was looking for a side link, so I used the plain tangent function, not the inverse. Or you could put it in as a fraction, 120 over tangent of 19 degrees, and you still get the same answer. So Monday when I come back to class, you should be ready to talk about both reviews. Your Unit 3 review Part 1 is on the similarity. Unit 3 review Part 2 is over the right triangles and trig. There may be some questions that you have on the special right triangles because I told you earlier we are going to wait to do those later. But if you have to, set them up and solve them with your trig functions. Totally valid way and method to find anything that has to do with those special right triangles. Your test will be next Wednesday.